As the distribution of the vaccine finally begins to accelerate under the Biden administration, there is certainly hope on the horizon. But we're a far way off from a full recovery. And it is our job to help millions of Americans, struggling Americans, through the next several months of difficulty and hasten the day when our country can finally return to normal. The American Rescue Plan is designed to do just that. Keep American families and businesses and schools and workers afloat until they can get back on their feet. And there's a broad consensus that our country needs more support to get through this crisis. Mayors and governors from both parties support the plan. The Republican governor of West Virginia told Congress, we need to go big. Economists from across the political spectrum say that our economy needs further support. The chair of the Federal Reserve, appointed by President Trump, just told us that, quote, the economic recovery remains uneven and far from complete, and the path ahead is highly uncertain. Chairman Powell, hardly a raving liberal, concluded, there's a long way to go. And it has broad support in America. 7 in 10 Americans approve of the American Rescue Plan. In some polls I've seen, a majority of Republicans approve of this plan, Republican voters, not Republicans here in the Senate. Now, it's easy to see why there's such broad support. The COVID pandemic is the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the worst public health crisis our nation has faced in 100 years. But our Republican colleagues say all these groups demanding the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, business leaders, government officials from both parties, economists from across the spectrum, and 7 in 10 Americans, Republicans say all of them are wrong. According to a report in CNN, Republican leaders are maneuvering to get every single Republican member to oppose the emerging legislation, every single one. Make no mistake, Republicans oppose the American Rescue Plan to the detriment of the country, and they do so at their own political peril. If our Republican colleagues want to oppose direct checks to struggling families, food assistance to hungry Americans, keeping teachers, firefighters, and essential public employees on the job, providing another round of support for small business, helping schools reopen as quickly and safely as possible, speeding vaccinations around the country, well, if congressional Republicans want to oppose all that, my response is, good luck. The country needs this final push. It's overwhelmingly popular. A new analysis this morning showed another vaccine produced by a U.S. company is safe and effective, which only underscores the need for federal dollars to accelerate its distribution. It will help millions of American families survive the ongoing crisis, recuperate from the economic hardship of the past year, and set our country on a firm path to recovery. That's why Senate Democrats have made it the first legislative item on our agenda. By stark contrast, the first action item taken by Republican Senate majority when they got the majority in 2017 was an attempt to repeal our nation's health care law and rip health coverage away from millions of Americans. Republicans followed it up with a giant tax cut disproportionately aimed at big corporations and the uber-rich. The Democratic Senate majority is going to start on a much different note. This week, the House, and soon thereafter the Senate, will start working on President Biden's American Rescue Plan to deliver desperately and urgently needed assistance to the American people. One final note on this topic, the minimum wage. As it has been reported widely, the Senate parliamentarian is hearing arguments today on the $15 minimum wage policy included in the House version of the bill. According to the Congressional Budget Office, raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour has a significant budgetary impact, which should make it permissible under the Senate's reconciliation rules. And I want to thank all of the hardworking Senate staffers, on my staff, Senator Sanders' staff, and many others, in participating in these arguments today. Now, on another matter, everyone knows our country and our economy faces daunting challenges beyond COVID-19. And while our two parties don't agree on a whole lot, both Republicans and Democrats know that one of the main challenges of the 21st century will be competing with and confronting China. The roots of this challenge go back decades. When I was first elected to the Senate and visiting all corners of New York, I saw entire industries going under as a result of unfair Chinese competition and the manipulation of the currency by China. For decades, China has effectively cheated and stolen its way to economic growth, engaging in brazen theft of American intellectual property via cyber operations, forced technology transfers, the dumping of cheap goods in our economy, and for a while, the pernicious manipulation of its currency. American workers, academics, and businesses of all sizes have paid the price to the tune of millions of jobs and trillions of dollars of wealth. More recently, China has directed its energy and mercantilist policies towards beating the United States and like-minded countries to the pole position on all leading technologies in the 21st century. And when I say China, I mean the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. The American people have nothing against the Chinese people. I've made no secret of America's failure to hold the Chinese government accountable, and that has been a failure of both parties in the past. After another bout of tough talk, we're not much closer to reining in China's predatory behavior than we were 4 years ago. That is why yesterday I asked the chairs and members of our relevant Senate committees to begin work on legislation to enable the United States to outcompete China and create American jobs. At the core of this effort will be the Endless Frontier Act. This is a bipartisan legislation that Senator Young and I have drafted together over a year ago. It would surge resources into the National Science Foundation and the Department of Commerce to advance American innovation in a number of critical technologies. We must also consider significant investments, even through emergency appropriations, to rebuild the capacity of the U.S. semiconductor industry. This, too, is a bipartisan effort that Senators Cotton and Cornyn joined Senator Warner and I, and we placed the original authorizing legislation in the defense bill. Right now, semiconductor manufacturing is a dangerous, weak spot in our economy and in our national security. Our auto industry is facing significant chip shortages. This is a technology the United States created. We ought to be leading the world in. The same goes for building out 5G, the next generation telecommunications network. There is bipartisan interest on both these issues. Overall, the new legislation must achieve 3 goals. 1, boost American competitiveness by investing in our economy and our workers. 2, leverage our alliances abroad. And 3, stop, once and for all, China's predatory practices. A number of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have strong bipartisan ideas, including ideas on these issues, including Senators Menendez and Risch, Brown and Toomey, Cantwell and Wicker. I hope we can all work together to craft a bill that meets that moment. It is my intention to put this legislation on this topic on the Senate floor for a vote this spring, and I urge the committees to continue their work in a bipartisan way so we can have strong legislation before us. It so happens that today, at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, significant work will be done on the same issues. President Biden has invited a bipartisan group of lawmakers to the White House to discuss concerns with the U.S. supply chain, particularly the semiconductor shortage, and will sign an executive order aimed at plugging the holes. I applaud both the meeting and the executive order. The new administration is taking a strong first step in shoring up America's critical supply chains and putting a spotlight on American competitiveness. And finally, Mr. President, I want to commend the Rules Committee and the Homeland Security Committee yesterday for holding an important hearing examining the attack on January 6th, the horrible, horrible attack. It was the first of what will be many examinations of the events on January 6th and how we can prevent such an attack from ever happening again. The hearing revealed several security and communication failures that must be addressed going forward and followed up on in future investigations. Regrettably, the hearing also revealed that there are still members of the Senate Republican minority who are willing to continue the campaign of misinformation, deception, and conspiracy that helped fuel the attack on January 6th in the first place. So let me be very clear. Blaming the January 6th attack on provocateurs and fake Trump protesters is mindless garbage. It has no basis in fact. Perpetuating and giving a platform to those lies is a preposterous contribution to a Senate hearing devoted to Capitol security. Everyone needs to move forward by sticking to the facts and engaging in a very serious discussion about the security of the Capitol complex. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.